So, hello everyone. Welcome to our regular Sunday night Suit in the City. Coming to you live from the edge of the Hudson in New York City. My name is Regina, and my co host, literally, Stephen Sass. So, we're really glad to have you here tonight to discuss this confounding topic that seems to be more and more relevant to our lives on the daily, which which is unpleasant, but we have to deal with it. So deal with it we shall. This is the topic of anger.
What happens if thinking about anger makes you angry?
Well, it's funny enough that you should say that, Stephen, because even thinking about anger can lead one to, a bit of anger arising, even on the subtlest of levels.
Why can't all these people just not be angry? It makes me angry.
It's a bummer when that happens.
I know. Ugh.
So, yeah, so serious topic, everyone. And just as a reminder, so when we're talking about anger, we're talking about it as it comes from us or how we deal with it when it comes towards us. And how is this part of our practice? It's a big part of our practice. And Thursday, we talked about the anger and the contention that comes about when people have views and they're absolutely certain that their views are correct, the one and only truth. They are the possessors of that truth. And yeah, people can come to blows defending that truth. And now we're on the topic of a slightly different form of anger, but one that comes up, not quickly arising, but one that you kind of have to feed a little bit by bit, day by day. And I feel a little, I don't know if I'm projecting, but a little anger, Stephen. Are you a little anxious, a little worried that we haven't done the poem yet?
I'm feeling resentful.
This is what I was worried about. So let me pull up the poem.
Maybe the poem is about resentment or resignation. Is resignation a type of resentment?
Um,
Can one be resigned and not angry?
I've been resigned and not angry. So let me share the screen so we can see.
Ah, yes. East Coker, Part 5.
T.S. Eliot.
T.S. Eliot, Tom Eliot, an American poet who lived much of his life in England. And if you actually go and listen to his spoken recording of this very poem, you might think he was English because he spoke very much with a British accent. Although this poem has three French words in it, I please accept my apologies, don't be angry. L'entre deux guerres means between two wars, and specifically it's talking about the two world wars, the period of time that's often called the interwar period. This poem was written in this part of the four quartets. This poem, I believe, was written about 1940, so after the Second War had begun. And Eliot was quite famous for a different poem he wrote in 1922 called The Wasteland. And then he kind of had a quiet period. He had a really, really bad marriage, which probably made him angry. And then he started writing these poems again. And this is a part of a part. So this is part 5 of the second part of four quartets. And so we thought we'd read a little bit of this for you tonight. So here I am, in the middle way, having had 20 years largely wasted, the years of entre deux guerres, trying to use words, and every attempt is a wholly new start and a different kind of failure because one has only learned to get the better of words for the thing one no longer has to say, or the way in which one is no longer disposed to say it. And so each venture is a new beginning, a raid on the inarticulate, with shabby equipment always deteriorating in the general mess of imprecision of feeling, undisciplined squads of emotion. And what there is to conquer by strength and submission has already been discovered once or twice, or several times, by men whom one cannot hope to emulate. But there is no competition. There is only the fight to recover what has been lost, and found and lost again and again, and now under conditions that seem unpropitious. But perhaps neither gain nor loss. For us, there is only the trying. The rest is not our business.
Thank you for that, Stephen. I do really like that poem a lot. Um, one of my favorite little lines is the undisciplined squads of emotion.
I know. I was going to say that was my favorite too. This
Yeah,
general mess of imprecision of feeling, undisciplined squads of emotion. It kind of describes a lot of our lives, doesn't it?
it does. It definitely does describe, well, okay, it depends on who you're talking to. I can say that I have experienced undisciplined squads of emotion. Um, and it's very difficult. It's very unpleasant. And I can't help but look out into the world and think that we are also, some in this world, there are these undisciplined squads of emotion that are affecting us in so many different ways. It's a very hard thing to see. Um, so with that, we know as Buddhists that it's always an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
That is the path that we have taken, that we have embarked on. As the Buddha said, no one ever said this was going to be easy.
Oh, is that a fake Buddha quote?
Might be, I don't know.
Uh-huh. Don't worry, be happy.
That's right. I thought that before we went on to our sutta of resentment, we might want to look and see if any of you, and I do apologize for having put it up later, much later after the class. And then I realized after we signed off that I didn't even let y'all know that it was going to be up on the website, this chart. Um, I
I'm
know
not
that
angry.
I know, trying not to be too angry with me. But I do wonder, I myself worked on this chart and I'm wondering if any of y'all did, which is, if you did and it was helpful and you don't want to share, that's great. On the other hand, if you did and you learned something interesting through working through this chart and noting the emotion when it arises and how it felt in the body, it would be great to hear you share. So raise that little blue hand if you want to. Otherwise, I'm going to call on Stephen.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I have a story about it.
Okay.
All right. So, as you may know, I live in an apartment building, which has a front door where one is buzzed in from. And if one rings the buzzer, one actually gets called on their telephone. It's not actually the buzzer. So I get the call on my cell phone. So I noticed that we get a lot of deliveries, of course, today because everyone's getting everything brought to their door, like Amazon. And I get all kinds of delivery people, like the Amazon people, calling me, but I'm not the person they're delivering to, but they're calling me for some reason. And I started getting really annoyed because my phone is ringing and it's not for me and it's the front door. And I get annoyed at these people and I'm like, I'm not even going to answer. I know it's the delivery people. I know it's not for me. Let them stand out there in the cold and figure it out. But then I thought, well, why don't you just let them in anyway? Whatever. They're just trying to deliver this box. Why make them sit out in the cold and get annoyed or freezing? And then I started noticing that a lot of the times when I would sort of snarkily answer the phone and say, "Who is this?" And they would say, "It's Amazon." And I say, "For whom is this package?" And they would say, "A different apartment." And I would say, "Well, you've got the wrong number," and hang up. But then I noticed that the apartment number, was always kind of the same number. And then I did some scientific experimentation and found out that there's something wrong with our buzzers. So when the poor Amazon person calls other numbers, it rings my phone, which is not the fault of the delivery people. And then I felt really bad because those poor people were not just ringing random buzzers. It wasn't their fault at all. And I was just sitting in my warm apartment thinking, whatever, they should figure it out. I don't care if they freeze their buns out there ringing all the buzzers. I'm not letting them in. And that was pretty bad. So it was kind of a great melange of anger and guilt combination.
Anger arose in you. And then I'm guessing guilt came after you said, let them freeze, because it is one of the coldest days of the year so far.
Well, I'm not even have to say it's not only today that this happened.
Oh, okay. So a lot of days you said, let them freeze. Did
Well,
you
it's
any?
more than one.
Okay. I'm really impressed that you're able to admit all this in public.
I
Uh,
know. Please
did
don't send me any packages. I can't handle it.
not to judge you for your less than stellar Buddhist response. Did you notice any responses in your body when they kept calling and you kept hearing the ring?
Yeah, I was like viscerally annoyed. I'm trying to do this thing, and the guy is calling. He's just picking random buzzers, trying to get in the building. Why can't he understand? And blah blah blah. And then when it all dawned on me in my great shame, I felt even worse.
Wow, you did the second arrow. Maybe
Yeah, it
third.
was just totally not worth it, the whole endeavor.
It was not. Did you
It
do
was
any
not.
of this by, did you do any writing or thinking about their perspective?
Well, I considered bringing hot chocolate out to everyone who comes to the door, but I have to admit I didn't do that either.
Okay. But you did see their point of view. They were just trying to do their job.
They're just trying to put the box inside the door. I mean, they're not really trying to make my life miserable.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Stephen.
No, thank you.
Is there anyone else that wanted to share? Another person I could share, but I shared a ton here. So I figure maybe one of y'all would be interesting.
I don't have it. This is Yan Kuei. I don't have a specific example, but I think it's interesting. Anytime anger arises, for me anyway, I always think it's somebody else's fault. Like somebody is doing something to me, to hurt me, to irritate, to it's somebody out there, and so it's just very automatically.
Even if it's an inanimate object, I can say personally, right? And there's a funny commentarial thing we'll read to you in a bit. Yeah, so even if something happens, I smash my hand on something and I'm like, this cabinet, it's here to make my life miserable, right? Why would I blame myself when I could blame a piece of furniture? Duncan?
Yes, I could tell you a little story, but I would like to let other people go first because I spoke last week. So if there's somebody else who wants to tell their story, I'm happy to be a kind of backup.
No,
Well,
you're our prime time. Go for
okay.
it.
So I didn't write down um, when Regina put that up. I didn't write it down right away. So I kind of recapped it in my mind. It's in a way like the five aggregates. There's a progression from a feeling, perhaps a perception, from an emotional tone to a perception to a volitional formation. There's a kind of rapid movement. And that these five aggregates are like a murderer, was the image. So the story I had was, I got up in the morning and I was just making the bed, and I remembered something that had happened. I've been working with a group that's been pressuring our utility to buy more solar, and they are stuck at 0.5%, and they're refusing to do anything. So a couple of the people in the group were in a conference where the CEO was speaking, and they raised this question. And so the security came and took them away, escorted them out, and said, if you come back, we're going to call the police. So while I remember this, while I was making the bed, I had an angry feeling. I labeled it as I recalled this incident, which I was not involved with directly. And then I made up an entire story. The volitional formation just took off. You know, what if I were there? What would I do to stand my ground and so on? And then I noticed that this whole thing had just kind of like happened. You know, it had no relation to what was actually going on. So in terms of this sequence, I thought it was like claimed the five acres was like a burglar who just burst in through the door, just like that. So that was my experience.
It doesn't sound particularly pleasant, but it doesn't sound as bad as white hot anger. But it is always,
Right.
I think it's always sort of stunning to stand back for a moment and see how not in charge we are of our own minds. It's just kind of doing its thing, and we're kind of like strapped in for the ride, and we're like, wait a second, who exactly is in charge here anyway? Right?
Right. Um,
Could
yeah.
I say something?
Oh, sure, Sue Ann.
I'm wondering if we could have a little more time on it because I didn't discover it till late, and I started going through it, and I noticed I was being very glib and flip about it, thinking I was right and having a really hard time processing every stage of it because it's that thing I alluded to the other night about my cousin on Facebook, and I hate Facebook as much as I hate Amazon, and so there we have hatred coming into it as well. So I'm wondering, I'd like some more time to give it some more thought. Could we also maybe listen on Thursday if everybody's willing?
I think that's a great idea. Let's do that. So people can have more time to absorb that. Yeah, I would love that. That'd be great. And meanwhile, how about we go on to the reading, and if someone else had something that they wanted to share afterwards, we can do that. But thank you for that recommendation, Sue Ann. And
Okay, thanks.
sure. And I think with that, we should go on to the arena of a really tough type of anger, because it sort of takes residence in our minds and sort of just stays there. And sometimes I've noted for myself, it's like, when is this thing ever gonna go where I have to keep feeling this over and over? And that is resentment. And you may have seen the little word play, the resentment, resentiment, as in feeling the same thing over and over again. Very unpleasant. And so here we are going to read this. And how about, why don't you just read it for us, Stephen?
The whole thing?
Well, it's kind of short.
Okay. Grounds for resentment. And by the way, this is Venerable Sujata's special translation of bhikkhus, mendicants. He seems to be the only one on earth that makes this choice, but it means a person who has given up everything, I guess, or without any money. Mendicants, they are 10 grounds for resentment. What 10? Thinking, they did wrong to me, you harbor resentment. Thinking, they are doing wrong to me, they will do wrong to me. Or, they did wrong by someone I love. Or, they are doing wrong by someone I love. Or, they will do wrong by someone I love. And then we have, they helped someone I dislike. They are helping someone I dislike. Or they will help someone I dislike. You harbor resentment. Or you just get angry for no reason. These are the 10 grounds for resentment.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Yeah, so these are the 10 basic reasons that we enter what I like to call the arena. The arena. This is, we all know what an arena is, right? There's a gladiator, there's lions, there's people who get eaten. But while you're in the arena, you need to be thinking about what you're going to do, what the other person's going to do, what's going to happen, what could possibly happen. And then whilst we're in the arena, we formulate our plan of action. And while we're formulating the plan of action in the arena, very difficult mind states arise, such as anger and Um, it causes a lot of pain. Now, this can seem kind of silly, but these are things that can keep us stuck. And I'll give you a story very short. I live in a condo here in New York City. It's different from a co-op, much better, but not, well, it's like you have a board, you have a managing agent that you pay. The board comes up with things they want to do. They take money, they ask for more. It can be really, really frustrating. So my first few years living here, I got in this place of like the board and the managing agent. Well, I still do sometimes, but back then it was really, really difficult. Like, well, why are they taking down the lights? Why are they taking down the lights? Because the lights are just fine and they're just going to raise our common charge. They are doing wrong to me. I don't want to have to pay more, right? And now my thing is, why did they take down the lights that they replaced? And now they're going to take them down again because they say they're going to replace them with LED when they already said that they did that. What kind of scam are they pulling now? So it's like these things. And every time that I would think about the board, my heart rate would just go through the roof. I mean, I could feel it palpitating. I would feel tension. And I'm saying because I want y'all to get into the body. What is happening within the body? I remember one time I was taking the subway to work in the morning and there was someone from the building right next to me. We started talking about the building and the managing agent and the board. And there it was, this act to anger. And it's just, this resentment is a very difficult thing because like I said, to me, unlike being angry with someone because they dropped a book on your foot and then you're like, oh, I get it. It was an accident. You can get over it. This is something that is carried and causes a lot of suffering.
I think one of the key things that I noticed here is that it's constantly talking about the three time periods: before, present, and future. And of course, it seems like, to me at least, most of the time we are resentful for things that are not actually currently happening. In other words, things that are not even really happening, things that we remember happening, things that we worry might happen. There's not even real things. This is sort of like, just kind of speculative resentment. Not even resentment for things that have really maybe currently afflicting us.
Well, I think, was it Mark Twain who said some of the worst things in my life never even happened?
I love that. Right. Exactly. Because actually so much of our lives is spent not in the moment that's actually happening, not in the present moment at all.
Well, I think for me, one of the most important things about the sutta is it does delineate, as you said, before, during, and after. And these things that we do, I mean, you think that after junior high or grade school that you don't have cliques where you're like upset because they're helping that other girl and they're supposed to be your friend and not her friend. But do we ever grow up from that? I mean, sometimes it seems like not, you know?
There's always another reason to be resentful.
Well, it seems to be.
Can you share with us the commentary, what the commentary says about you get angry for no reason?
Yeah, I would love that. I can't really share the commentary, but I can share my commentary.
Oh, okay.
But
Please tell us.
I'll spare you that.
Are you angry?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
just checking.
But yeah, so I think the thing that's really important about this is not just realizing that so often, I was recently angry at my roommates because they wanted to move closer to campus. Why? That's weird. There's not even classes in session. It's a pandemic. Why are you doing this to me? And I was like really freaked out about it. It's like, how could you do this? I'm never going to have a roommate. How am I going to afford this? Of course, ended up that even in a pandemic, you can find a roommate in New York City. But just that whole thing of like being angry about things that don't happen and the pain that that causes. And how do we get over this, Stephen?
Well, there's actually a sequel sutta, the secret sequel sutta.
Let's go to the secret Secret Sequel Sutta. Say that 3 times fast.
The secret sequel sutta that we're about to show you.
Secret Sequel. Ugh, I
Number
can't-
80.
So this is translated by Venerable Bodhi, and we're going to share this with you. And
It's actually not really secret. It's just the next sutta.
it is the next. Well, it's the sutta that is complementary.
Right.
So would anyone like to read this? Who hasn't read recently? Okay, I will call on someone then.
Uh-oh.
Who has not read recently? I mean, this is tough on me because I
Don't make me come over there.
know.
Shall I read, Regina? I'm in a very resentment mode right
Oh,
now.
yes.
All right.
very
Let's
good.
hear it.
A lot of resentment right now.
Okay,
Uh,
good.
Wait, is this the line to read? Because there are these 10 ways. Is this the correct line?
That's correct.
Because there are these 10 ways of removing resentment. What 10? Thinking they act for my harm. But what can be done about it? 1, remove resentment. Shall I keep saying the thinking and the 1, 2, 3? Can I skip that?
I like the thinking because it's
Okay.
part of it.
Think they are acting for my harm. But what can be done about it? 1, remove resentment. Thinking they will act for my harm. But what can be done about it? 1, removes resentment. Thinking they act for the harm of one who is pleasing and agreeable to me. 5, they are acting for the harm of one who is pleasing and agreeable to me. They will act for the harm of one who is pleasing and agreeable to me. But what can be done about it? 1, removes resentment. Thinking for they acted for the benefit of one who is pleasing and disagreeable to me. They are acting for the benefit of one who is displeasing and disagreeable to me. They will act for the benefit of one who is displeasing and disagreeable to me. But what can be done about it? 1, removes resentment, and 1 does not become angry without reason. These bhikkhus are the 10 ways of removing resentment.
Thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate this complimentary sutta, Stephen. And I have strong affection for Venerable Bodhi. But is it really just that easy? Well, I can't do anything about it.
Well, I have to say that I think it might be a misreading to say, well, what can I do? Therefore, I shouldn't care. Because I think it's important to sort of separate out anger and care, or anger or not being angry and not caring. Because there must be a way to be emotionally invested, or at least have compassion and concern about things without being either apathetic or angry. And so that's a very complicated mixture of emotions that can happen here. But we can be angry about lots of things that we personally can't control. But even if we think what can be done about it, well, maybe we can think of something that could be done about it. But getting angry often, if not most of the time, doesn't really help things. That's how I read it.
Well, and in fact, in one of the suttas, the Buddha, and I've brought this up as an example before, but the Buddha advises us that in fact, anger can cloud our reasoning. And so it's not just not helpful, but it's actually hurtful because it can keep us trapped, or it can keep us from finding a way out of that anger, which is a very, very painful emotion. Not only is it very painful, and as we've discussed, it's something that can be very physically damaging to this body that we inhabit.
Absolutely. And I think we see often in the Buddhist, in the suttas, that the whole perspective of the teaching is in large part from the perspective of the practitioner. So we are told, what the question is raised, what is the world? The whole world. And the answer comes, it's this body. It's this fathom length long body. That's the world for me. Or what is everything? And the answer to what is everything is, in fact, the six sense bases. And so being angry or not being angry is very much about how we suffer. It's not, it is, of course, also about how others endure our wrath, but it is in large part about our well being. And not being angry is for our benefit. It's not just so we don't annoy our roommates. It's for our health and our well being. So I think that's sometimes hard, at least for me. Maybe it's a Western thing. I'm not sure, that we think that, well, I shouldn't really think of myself too much. And then sometimes people accuse a lot of the suttas in the canon to be seemingly sort of self absorbed, always thinking about, how I'm doing and how's my meditation, and the whole world is really revolving around me. But in a way, what can we control? We can really control our mind. That's what we can control. And hopefully by that, we can add some kindness to the world outside of us. But really, it's it is our minds that we have to work on.
It is. And definitely do not want to make light of the great, great difficulty of attenuating this feeling, especially for people who tend to have an aversive personality, as I do. I just know from experience that um, getting, I don't know, sanding down the anger so that there can be a more gentle surface there is a difficult process, but one that's well worth it, because the anger, as I said, it's a very painful place to be. I once heard a quote from the Dalai Lama. He was saying, much like the sutta, but in the funny way that he talks. He was talking about, if you have a problem, well, is there something you can do about it? Well, then no problem. And then he said, well, you have a problem. Is there nothing you can do about it? No problem. He's sort of just, if there's nothing you can do, then the next step is radical acceptance, something that it's been codified in sort of the Western mindfulness movement, but it's this radical acceptance of the way that things are. It doesn't mean that that's the way that things will always be, but the way that things are right now in our lives. And I know for me, sometimes the anger or pain has been so bad and strong that the whole issue, one of the three characteristics, anicca, has been very beneficial. Nothing is ever forever, right? Everything is impermanent. But yeah, I think one of the other things that I have found really helpful in terms of resentment is, as I said, anicca, but also self-compassion and metta practice. I know I say it over and over again, but metta for whatever you can have metta for at that time. And I'm not saying have metta for the people who on your board who are going to raise the monthly karma charge 6%. I'm not saying go there, but metta for the pain of that, or the fear, the financial insecurity, and being able to cultivate a sense of feeling safe within oneself. I'm wondering about other people and how you may find yourself working towards disavowing these feelings of resentment, and what has been helpful to you in your Buddhist practice in terms of not having or recognizing these feelings and not having them take over. What was it that was in the poem? the mass of human uncontrolled emotion or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I would love to hear from anyone out there who has
I could say something.
Sure, Sue Ann, and then anyone else who hasn't shared recently, just raise your hand. Sue Ann?
Okay, I know I spoke before, I'll be quick. I have a real problem with people who don't get as angry as I get. I mean, not only am I angry over what's happening, say the Trump world, but I get angry over people who don't get as angry as I do. Like, how can you see this go on and not get angry? And isn't anger not to get attached to it and not to stay with it, but isn't that, I mean, a normal, healthy reaction to an unhealthy, horrible situation? I mean, I don't get, this is something that I'm having trouble with. I know not to stay in anger. I know that's not helpful. This resentment I'm building up is not helping me, and I'm trying to work through it, which is why I need some more time on that lesson. But I don't understand just pretending that something doesn't bring up anger in you when it's something so despicable or so disgraceful or horrible or just terrible to the people. And you got to get angry at it, but I think then you have to let it go. Is that not right? Or can you? I can't switch from, oh, they did this or this happened and this was really terrible, but I'll let it go because I meditate and I can rise above it. I can't. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like got too much more to learn or something, but that's just like I'm having a lot of trouble letting go of a feeling of anger and having to accept that I'm not allowed to get angry at things that are obviously something that is wrong. It's not right view. It's not right action.
Okay. Thank you for that. I get where you're coming from. I think, first of all, I do want to correct. Now, we're definitely not here saying don't be angry. Now, do recognize that there is karma attached to that very strong energy. And I do get the sense of having that passion and that drive to want something good rather than bad. And I think that's a beautiful place to come from. But I also think that the self-harm that is inflicted in one with the anger is something to look at. And just finally, before I go on to Carolyn, who has her hand up, is to recognize that anger doesn't necessarily change the situation. In fact, it isn't anger that changes it. And just stay with that for a second, because it's actually a different type of action that changes situations. And I will explicate, but I do want to hear from Carolyn.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Carolyn?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope you're not going to laugh at this. And Sue Ann, I don't want you to get upset. As we've been going through this whole thing for this amount of time, whatever time it is, I can't think of any time I've been felt resentment. And then I thought, do I not even know what it means? Like, there's just no feeling arises like that. I don't know who I've ever felt resentful toward or why I would. So I don't know, am I just stupid? But it just doesn't exist. I shouldn't say it doesn't exist. It must be there someplace, but it's not really been watered. And maybe it goes with also that the anger is very low down, like it's very rare I'm angry also. And maybe it all comes back to the metta and 50 years of sending metta, that perhaps that's the antidote. I don't know. And I've said many times, like a thought arises in me if somebody says, I don't like this person or whatever, or we don't like Trump, we don't like whoever, like a pain in my heart arises thinking, who would I not love? I might not like what somebody's doing, but who would I not love? So I don't know if that's why there's not resentment. I don't know if I just don't understand what resentment is, but I cannot even recall the last time I felt that. So I don't know where it went, if it was even there.
Well, bless you for that, Carolyn. I wish I could say the same thing. You know, I don't have 50 years of metta under my belt, so maybe that's why. But I would also, I'm going to do a tiny bit of pushback, Carolyn, and
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to try and just see if there's any tiny bit of thought ever in your mind. And I'm not saying now, but throughout these next few days where you're like, oh, I wish she wouldn't have said that, or I wish he wouldn't have done that. And where that might have been a thought process, and just hold on to that and see if that comes up. Because sometimes things may come up and we don't realize it until it's been brought to the conscious level.
No.
And I'm not trying to implant resentment, by the way.
Oh, I know.
But I would be curious. I will be curious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm with people who have very different thoughts than myself. It's neighbors behind me. We're friends for 43 years and they're great Trump supporters. They don't think there's COVID. They don't think anything serious happened at the White House. And I hear this day in and day out. They don't understand me. But like a resentment or anger doesn't arise. Maybe it's a judging thing, like I thought, like that comes from some kind of ignorance. And maybe that's wrong too. But it's not a resentment. I thought, well, they're old, they don't understand. So then I send them metta and go on my way. But
Wow. That's great, Carolyn.
you know, and what am I going to fight with people who are 87 years old? Why am I even going to get angry at them?
No,
You know,
that's great. You're our metta lodestar. So,
that's the only thing I can think, that perhaps that's why these things don't arise. Like metta is so powerful.
it can
And
be.
yeah, I mean, I don't know that for a fact. I know for a fact it is powerful, but I don't know if that's the reason. I don't know.
Okay.
Like the buttons haven't been pushed.
I am going to give you a big salute, and we'll speak more about this. And I'll move on to Jean. And thank you, Carolyn. And Jean, you
You're
have your
welcome.
hand raised.
Okay, yeah, I admire Carolyn, but I'm not there either. I'm still a little suspicious of too much metta in my life, in my practice, not in Carolyn's practice. I take her as she is, but anyway, I worked on this without this script. I did have some of it, you know, part of it I had copied when it was on the screen. And so I had a little gist of it, but I wasn't quite sure about it. And but I did try to be more observant. And I realized that, you know, also things stir me up politically. And I was very upset at seeing all this, you know, hate business this past week. There was a lot of that. And then I was thinking, you know, about I have a nephew who, you know, supports some of these people. He lives in Georgia, who I dread, and then trying to hold all this, and you know, my caring for my nephew, you know, and knowing he's basically in many ways a fine person, but that there's other things about him that disturb me very much. And then I found that I wake up at night and start criticizing myself and, you know, all my thinking about this. And then one morning I woke up and I just felt this real terror, you know, that I had, you know, I just didn't know what to make of people anymore or myself and being in the world. you know, and it was just like, there was no place to go. So I finally realized that this is what I was feeling. No matter what was right or what was wrong, I was just feeling this emotion. And that, you know, I had to go into my body and see where it was, you know, and recognize, and I could see, you know, where all this pain and tension was. And I just really looked at the whole thing, not with a lot of understanding or anything, but just looked at it all for a while. And all of a sudden, the whole thing broke up. And it just like I felt it sort of drifted away. And it was like, it just felt like it wasn't, like I could just work with it if I had to, you know, if I could find some kind of action, something I could do, but I didn't know what it was. But I felt if I wanted to do something constructive, and maybe it would occur to me, and that's what I would do, you know, and just leave it open. And so it's not that I solved all my problems, because I had other problems I had to deal with, you know, of resentment during the week about different things. But again, I felt if I could get away from it for a while and sit down and really just stay with it and look at it and feel it and work it, you know, in a more open-minded way, you know, it was helpful. Anyway, I tried to work on it.
Thank you so much, Jean. I appreciate what you shared. It sounds like quite a struggle, but it also sounds like that you did get to a place of, I hate to use the phrase, but of radical acceptance, you know, just this is how it is, and feeling it in your body, and in some ways making peace. And also what you spoke about in terms of this past week. Well, one of the things I heard, I went to hear Thich Nhat Hanh speak at the Beacon probably about 2 years ago. And one of the things that he said, and I know that he said it before, is we really, really have to be careful with our minds. That is, we have to be careful what we put in our minds. In other words, reading the paper can be somewhat harmful. We could be re-traumatizing ourselves by reading the news. I know for me, I've had to, like, you know, I scan the headlines and I try not to get too upset. But when we watch the news and read the news and listen to it, well, one thing is really, it's very rare that anything good is on the news. So I stopped telling Alexa to play the news. I just don't right now, because we have to take care. So I want to offer that as maybe something that people might want to consider. And I realize that we are over time. I want to thank you all for being here. It's a very important topic. Stay in your bodies. Feel what's happening. This is what the Buddha said. Stay in your bodies and see what's going on. We'll talk more about it. This is a very powerful emotion, and we have to be skillful around it. And we can be. The Buddha taught us that. So I want to thank you all. For those of you who are going off to a Monday morning, have a beautiful day. And for everyone else, have a wonderful evening. And I look forward to seeing y'all on Thursday. So have a good night.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Good night.